All right.
Okay. One take. I told you. I only do one takes.
They should call you One Take
One
Brett.
take Thompson.
Today we talk to Brett Thompson, CEO and co-founder of Mzansi Meat Co. Brett and Mzansi Meat have recently launched Africa's first cultivated beef burger. Brett is very passionate about effecting positive change and has been a spokesperson for Meat-Free Mondays and Veganuary South Africa. He's held senior positions at Beyond Carnism and Pro-Veg International, accumulating over 10 years experience in animal advocacy. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to yet another amazing, incredible, awesome episode of the Citizens Podcast. I have a very amazing guest for you today, Brett Thompson. Brett is the CEO and co-founder of Mzansi Meat. If you don't know Mzansi Meat, we're going to find out who Mzansi Meat is. Brett, welcome.
Thanks very much. I'm going to try and live up to all those amazing, incredible things, but I'll see what I can do.
I'm pretty sure you will, man. Brett, thank you. Thank you for making time to come to our podcast today. Do you mind starting with introducing yourself, who you are, born, bred, raised?
Yeah, sure.
What you currently do?
I'll give it a crack. Brett Thompson, born and raised in Cape Town. And I've, I guess for the past 15 years, have been working in animal advocacy and alternative proteins. That's been my career since essentially almost the day I left university. I wrote my thesis after I stopped eating meat, and I got interested in the topic and was studying economics, and I wrote a thesis on the economic case for vegetarianism. And sort of flash forward, that kind of started everything, and took me to a job in Durban where I was working for a company making alternative proteins, and then another job, a couple of jobs in Germany, in Berlin, where I was working in animal advocacy organizations, working on international campaigns, looking to improve the public's understanding of alternative proteins as well as the availability. So yeah, that's sort of my background, and then it brought me back to South Africa, and I can sort of unpack some of these things as we go, to start a company called Mzansi Meat Co. And Mzansi is Africa's first cultivated meat company, and I think there's a lot of it's new to South Africa, of course, because it's the first, so there's a lot of questions that I think we can jump into. But essentially what we are doing is growing meat outside of an animal in conditions that perfectly replicate an animal, and our goal is to be making a beef burger, which we've already done.
Yeah,
but that's my story.
Incredible, beautiful intro. The main reason we're here is to talk about the meat, right? And Mzansi Meat and where you headed and what it means to us. So let's just have that meaty conversation, because I believe meat in South Africa is not just a way of sustaining ourselves. It's also a culture. So there's many dynamics involved in you saying you're tackling, what is so dear to South Africans and Africans at large. So you recently launched the burger, which is South Africa's very first that was cultivated. Can you tell us about that, how that experience felt for you? How long did it take for you to get to the launch, actually, and what it had to take?
Well, I think we should start with culture. I, after 15 years of talking about eating meat and eating less meat and eating no meat, that was part of my job, started to understand that, particularly amongst South Africans, as you said, that it's not just the fact that it tastes good.
Yeah.
So if you... when we started the company, we were going out and doing some research and talking to South Africans and saying, like, what do you think about when you think about meat? And when you ask that question, people don't come out and say, well, burgers and sausages and societies or whatever it is, lamb chops. They will mention something like friends, or they'll say family, or they'll say, I think you were interviewed in one of our chats as well, and I think we said it was just something about like bringing people together, sharing, breaking bread type of thing, but meat as being that core component of it. So, and particularly when it comes to South Africa in your traditional settings, whether it's ceremonial, or the fact that livestock is a show of wealth, so it might not even be consumed directly for meat, but it still showcases wealth. Or hunting. I mean, hunting is a big part of many people's culture, whether they are subsistent or whether they do it recreationally. So I think if you look at South Africa and you want to start a company like what we want to do, and we want to make a meat company, and if you didn't look at culture first, you're going to be in a bit of trouble. So that's why we chose the name Mzansi. That's why we wanted to make it South African. We wanted to embrace the culture that we have. I think in 100 years, people will still be eating meat, but it'll be a different kind of meat. And that's our goal, to make that better meat. And so that was a sort of starting point rather, for the company, and then ultimately led to this our first burger being made a couple of weeks ago. I don't know when this will be played out, but I'm sure you can allude to the event in the comment section. But it was a fantastic way to bring a number of South Africans together from very, very diverse backgrounds and get them to experience cultivated meat for the first time. We've been working with BioCity for 18 months now. Mm-hmm. They gave us a home. That's where we still work out of. So
shout out to BioCity.
Yeah, for sure. Deepak and Anesu and all the folks really gave us the ability to, as a young startup, bypass a lot of the hurdles, the capital costs and all that kind of stuff, and start making meat as soon as possible, because it's a lot of research and development is required to get to.
I can imagine.
It's expensive, and you just you're short on capital, and when you start these things, and we needed to put people into seats and put them into a lab, and that's what we did, and BioCity enabled us to do that. Yeah. And I can speak about the process a little bit later, but in terms of that event, we were able to bring 50 people together. And I mean, there were politicians, there were folks from the media, there were finance houses, there was people from fast food restaurants. We wanted to bring a lot of different people that really embodied the South African food system, and stick them in front of a couple of people who were going to eat a burger. Now, you can imagine saying, hey, let's get 50 people to watch people eating three burgers. It's quite a difficult task.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like saying, it's like one of the worst MasterChef episodes ever. It's just, but the crazy thing was that the amount of excitement over these three burgers was just phenomenal. We when we brought them in and we started prepping them sort of backstage, people could start smelling the meat.
I was there, man.
You were there.
Look, I saw the burgers that were raw at first. I'm like, okay, it looks like there's nothing special about this. I was worried it's gonna smell bad because you don't know.
So was I.
And the moment it was sizzling, it smelled like a real beef patty from my favorite restaurant, which I won't mention because they were probably not at the event.
They'll be at the next one.
Yeah. Hopefully. And I saw the three people sitting in front biting into that thing and it was juicy but at the back of my mind I was like, what does it taste like? And you said you're going to talk about the process. And again, congratulations. It was a successful launch. And I'm really looking forward to, seeing the burger on our shelves or in my favorite restaurant. So the process itself of, growing just one beef burger, what's the process like? What's required? And how long did it take you to grow those three beef burgers that we witnessed on that day?
Yeah, those three ones will sort of go down in history because they took obviously a little bit longer than what our process now has developed to. But
okay.
I'll start from the beginning and give you an insight and get to that part of the answer. It starts with a cell biopsy, which is a needle biopsy. We take a small incision, we make a small incision from an animal. They're under a local anesthetic and they're given painkillers, and we take it's a biopsy of about the size of a peppercorn. Okay, So we then and we work with a sanctuary here in Cape Town called Great and Farm Animal Sanctuary, where we've taken about 6 or 7 cells from different animals, and in total we've got about 10 what we call cell lines: cows, chicken, sheep. Those types of or different livestock species. The reasons why we want to work with the farm sanctuary is for us, it's very important for that animal to go through as minimal distress as possible, which they do. The animal's up within an hour, and there's a vet that looks after them, registered state vet, and then they're running around quite quickly in that sanctuary for the rest of their life, and that's all we really need from them. And then we'll bring it back to BioCity in Woodstock, and that's where we process the cell. It's about breaking it down to it's very, very like molecular level, I could say, but cellular level rather, and then we just are replicating the exact conditions that are found in an animal outside of the animal. Number one being 37 degrees. If you think about the temperature. I mean, how many times have you measured your temperature in the last 2 years? So it's about getting that condition perfectly replicated and then growing those cells in something that we call media, which is replicating what the cells need to feed on. And it's amino acids, it's sugars, it's potentially insulin for if we wanted to grow fat, which we do, and salts and a number of things to just replicate those conditions. But then once those cells start growing, it's a process of proliferation. They start duplicating. Your cells duplicate all the time, mine do. It happens roughly every 24 hours. We need to keep that going for a long period of time. And then once that duplication process goes to an ability to get to a commercial size, we then are sort of on the right track and then move those cells from in something called an incubator into something that's called a cultivator or a bioreactor. Yeah. And a bioreactor is just roughly it's a cow's body, but it's not a cow's body. It's almost actually a better way to describe it is what a fermenter or a vat looks like in a brewery. We are at the 100-liter, 200-liter mark. Breweries are in the 1,000 liters, and that's the direction that we want to get to. But that's all it is. It's just something that can regulate oxygen, carbon dioxide, pH levels, all those things that your body's doing. We want to do it. And so the kind of third and fourth component of this is that your cells grow in a sort of in 3D. They grow outwards and attach to types of scaffolding within your own body, of muscle tissue. And we are doing that with scaffolding that's mycelium-based or mushroom-based or also can be corn-based as well. And that allows the cells, the muscle and the fat cells to kind of grow around something and then grow in these 3D planes that are ultimately...
You said, isn't mycelium some form of, I don't know, mold or
mycelium.
Okay.
Mycelium is mushroom. It's just mushroom. Yeah. I mean, I guess technically mushrooms are all kind of they're fungus.
Fungus. Yeah. I'm thinking of something that grows under a carpet or something. I think. Where do you even get that?
That's. I mean, they do. It grows in. There's a couple of combinations. I mean, we've literally gone into the forest. I mean, it sounds rather hippie, but we've gone into the forest and actually collected some samples, and then replicated those samples in a more sterile environment. There's things like chicken of the forest. I don't know if you know about this. There's a mushroom called chicken of the forest. Wow. Because apparently it tastes like chicken. But I don't know if that's the exact reason. but the point is, so we just need that scaffold to start not start, but really allow the cells to get the texture, to get the mouthfeel, those things that you are more used to when it comes to meat. Otherwise, it's cells in itself are not, they don't have form. But then our next step after, that process, which I've described, when we did the 3 burgers now, I feel like we need to give them each a name, but no, I won't do that. That took us about 3 to 4 months of R&D. So from December of last year, 2021, to April, I can't even remember the days anymore, but around 4 to 5 months, it took us to get to a burger that we developed with another partner called Marn Daily Spices, who really helped bring that texture and the taste, because they're the food technologists. Now, when we're moving forward, our goal is to get to at scale to be producing every 3 to 4 weeks. We'll get in the beginning a couple of kilograms, but in the next 18 months we want to get towards tons. And that also just depends on scale. So we're still working towards that. But that's roughly the timelines, which, for a lot of, if you think about it in terms of a cow, it's 18 months for itself to get to ready to slaughter. So we're doing it in a fraction of the time. Ultimately,
Amazing. And I don't know, I think there's some people out there who are thinking, I know all this. Why is he saying it? I mean, to me, it's fascinating. To me and a whole lot of other South Africans. And So the taste, you spoke about the taste, which is very important. I think taste and culture. I've tried a whole lot of alternative protein options, and I was okay with them, but the issue was the taste for me. And I know this is nothing like, I don't know, a vegan burger. It's actually meat. But the taste, you tasted it. So what does it taste like? And how do you get that meaty taste? Is it from assistance from the mushroom you spoke about, or is it spiced artificially? And I'd like to know, are you focusing on specific cattle breeds, or are you just trying multiple breeds to see which one actually, taste the way you want it to?
It's a good question. It's a good couple of questions. So so there's sort of the taste and the texture of me trying it, which and several other people, because we are still startup based, so our production ability is limited. The taste and texture and how we achieved it. The question is whether or not there is assistance given, and so which I think is a valid question as well. And then I'll start with the last one first in terms of the cell lines, and does it matter from the breed of animal? That's an interesting question and one I don't have the answer to yet. So we've actually got sort of dairy breeds. We've got in South Africa we've got plenty, but us personally we've got dairy breeds. We've got cattle that are bred for beef, and then we've actually
like the Nguni one.
Well, Nguni is interesting because Nguni in certain parts of the country they do breed it for beef. But in terms of it's not maybe sort of a mainstream. So and the reasons for that, and just to quickly go into, we've done a biopsy from Nguni as well. We want to be looking at indigenous cattle to bring those to market because it's just interesting. I think the Bosmara cattle, there's an Afrikaner cattle, there's Angola cattle, which are all indigenous to Africa, and I think bringing those to potentially a world market one day is quite an exciting prospect for us, and something that I really want to drive. And if you come to our offices in Woodstock, you'll see two massive murals of an Nguni cattle, because we wanted to have that, it's a beautiful animal.
It is.
And then have that sort of really embody our company, and they're just really great animals from a perspective of they've got very resistance to tick bite fever. They've been able to sort of really manage in tough conditions, and I think that's what a startup has to do. So I think the cells in itself, we are trying to work out that question, does the cell line matter in the taste at the end of the day? If you want to, is it about what you feed that gets Wagyu beef at the end of the day, or is it coming from that certain animal? And the similar things with whether it's Angus beef or the equivalents that you get here in South Africa. So we're going to find that out, and we're going to do some pretty cool research to find, and working with food technologists to kind of try and understand that whole process. So it's a bit of nature versus nurture almost. Is it about what you feed the animal, or the cell rather, versus what kind of cell line you bring in? In terms of the actual taste itself, so I haven't eaten meat in 15 years. Not by sometime. A couple of years. I think mates to try to feed me burgers and stuff. But outside of that, for the last 15 years, I pretty much haven't eaten any meat. And from an animal, I try and avoid as many animal products as possible. So it was firstly very important for me not to be the only one that eats this burger and says, it tastes like meat, because I'm probably
blowing your own horn because you made it. So.
I made it, but I have no frame of reference now. I happily eat veggie burgers, so I don't think they're probably as good as a beef burger, but I think the veggie burgers out there are pretty decent. But so it was important that we brought on Absi. I think you've met Absi.
Yeah,
she's our head of taste, and she's daughter of a cattle farmer.
Yeah,
she is a restaurateur, and she works with the meat industry.
She loves meat.
She
very key.
But she also very much understands it from a perspective of where it's sourced from. She's started restaurants that they're really trying to look to understand the whole process instead of just mass market stuff. Which anyway. So she really understands meat, and the best part of this, which I only found out quite recently, before she ate our, because we were sampling our meat versus veggie burgers and versus conventional meat.
Yeah.
And she had never eaten a veggie burger.
Wow.
I mean, you know, the whole life. And so, and I was like, this person is our head of taste. It's perfect. And so when she ate it, she was like, this is meat. When I ate it, I was actually like, you know, taken aback because it's quite a strong taste when you haven't had it for a while.
Yeah.
Now look, it's not, and also we had James Foss, a politician, tried as well as you were there.
Yeah.
And everybody, the feedback that we had was great. I mean, the other interesting note is Deepak tried it. Deepak hasn't ever eaten beef because he's Hindu.
Oh.
So like, this is the interesting stuff that happens with cultivated meat, because what happens? Can vegans eat it? Can people, anyway, so you have that. So now is it the final burger that we're going to be selling, hopefully, to South Africans in a couple of years' time? No, still got a long way to go. And we are working with Mon to develop this. And so it is a blend. So we do introduce other spices. And those are, but as a beef burger has spices, boerewors has spices, you know, so it's just there's flavors there that you need to bring in as well, and fat, and we working on the fat component is something that we want to work on more, because that's such an important part of how you
Very
eat.
important, yeah.
The umami flavor, you know, that whole like mouthfeel. And like kind of, I don't know how to describe it better, but like that slimy, it's like kind of like it's a film that kind of coats your mouth. That just, it's amazing. And so that's the stuff that we're trying to work with. So yes, we are using some plant proteins in the beginning. It's a blend just for price as well. Ultimately, the flavor that when we start making this predominantly a plant-based, predominantly a cultivated cell-based meat product, you're going to be able to get the flavor and the profiles coming out of the cells. And when we first started, we sent samples over to Mon, the food flavorist sort of started playing around with the sample and smelling it and this, and like trying to, like, he's Austrian, so they're very like, it's a cultural flavor there, and as well as from France, because that's a company. And when he first tried it, it was like 4 people that first ever tried cultivated meat in Africa. First guy was Austrian. He couldn't believe it, because, you know, it was like, it's fresh mince. That's what it smells like and tastes like. So, and that was just that was a sample that came with there was nothing added to it or anything. So, to answer all those questions, it's definitely possible to come through the actual cultivated meat, so you don't have to add too much stuff. And it's crucial for us to do that, because South Africans and consumers generally are starting to say, I'm tired of turning my a package around and looking at the nutrition list, the ingredients list, and it being an essay. They want something simpler and smaller, and that's what our goal is.
Incredible, man. Wow. You also touched on something very profound. You said, these cattle, they are very resistant to tough conditions, and that's what a startup has to do. I didn't miss that. And Mzansi Meat is 2 years old now?
Correct, yeah.
So what kind of challenges did you come across? You know, I mean, I can imagine the concept itself can be crazy to someone. Like, what? You want to grow meat where? From what?
In Woodstock, what?
I mean, this has never been done in Africa. I don't know, maybe somebody tried and we don't know about them, but we know about you.
Well, they ate it and then they never survived. Is that what you're saying?
So, yeah, what are some of the challenges you faced along the way to get to where you are today?
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult to start a biotech company, and then to make it food tech or biotech. It does add layers of challenges, because you're blending science with business and a bit of art. And in the beginning, firstly, we started the company like end of 2019. It was me and another guy, Jay, he was my former business partner. And, we were like having these conversations with people and trying to explain the concepts of cultivated meat. And there was your reaction. I mean, you're crazy. It's never going to work. It's going to work in the Netherlands. It's not going to work here. South Africans aren't ready for this type of stuff. You know, the same sort of argument that I've heard I've been for 15 years, I've heard that for plant-based. And I'm saying cultivated is the next step in this sort of evolution. And so, I remember the one time we spoke to some pretty prominent scientist from a prominent university, and I won't say much more than that. And she just, for 45 minutes, she was very high up in her field of what, essentially what we were doing. She just said, this is stupid. You're never going to do it. You should make veggie burgers instead.
Wow.
That was the end of for 45 minutes she said that.
Wow.
She has a very foreign accent, and it was quite but the thing with that, I remember leaving, well, we was on Zoom, but I remember walking out of that and just being like, I felt like an entrepreneur then. Because it's like, when somebody says this is stupid, you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to continue with doing this.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah, I'll come back and show you the burger, which I need to. Anyway, so in the beginning, it was essentially this. We were trying to explain to South African investors what cultivated meat was. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to explain to foreign investors where South Africa was. I mean, it's not as bad as like they can't find it on the map. But South African investors thought this was something that was 5-10 years away, too risky to get involved with. And a lot of South African investors don't understand the mindset of the culture of like VC and startup. You can't be like, give me your projections of 5 to 10 years of revenue. You've got to say this is groundbreaking stuff. And then when it came to, speaking to foreign investors, there was too much risk associated with, a risky company in a risky country, roughly. So we had to deal with that. And that was the biggest challenge to get in the beginning. Then we found a guy from San Francisco. Well, he was San Francisco based, American guy. And he's like, I'm in, threw us a check. And that changed everything. So once we got that initial check, a couple of months into the life of the company, things started working. But the biggest thing with a food tech, well, one of the many things with a food tech company is that in a new industry, particularly in South Africa, there's no precedent. No one's done it before. So you can't go and approach a company and say, look, or approach people and say, you've worked in this and cultivated meat for a couple of years here, come work for us.
Yeah.
We needed to go to find young academics fresh out of university, finishing their PhDs and say, hey, don't continue your, making lots of money at a pharmaceutical, come and work for us for nothing. Not nothing, but you know what I mean? So we had to rework people that had different skill sets with like, it's somebody that worked in sports injuries. So it's called fibroblasts, which are the things that repair when you hurt yourself, even when you just work out. So we had to get guys like that involved. We had to get guys that got like very different yeast expression backgrounds, so making proteins from yeast. So that was very difficult. And then, I mean, I'm really not giving you guys too many plugs, but there is not a lot of lab facilities in South Africa.
Yeah. And
there is none that are either affordable or universities. And universities are bureaucratic and IP they want it, and it's just not geared for startup culture, in my opinion. I know Stellenbosch maybe is an example of not, but and so when BioCity sort of said, we were working out of some lab in Northwest, I think, which, we were going to have to convince people to drive like an hour and a half every day. But then BioCity said, hey, we've got this lab here in Woodstock, here's the keys. And when that happened, I mean, it all aligned, and now our team's growing to like, we're going to be nearly 10 in the next couple of months. And we're a lot more settled. But, to answer your question, it was that it was not about the money in the beginning. It was just convincing people that this was something that would work. Reducing the idea that this was a risky investment, and then finding people to put them in a facility where they can actually start doing some research and development.
Beautiful, man. I think you touched a bit on funding, so I think we'll touch on that and fundraising part at the end. I'm interested in knowing, what does the meat industry have to say about such an almost like a foreign concept in South Africa and Africa? Aren't you finding resistance, and also the general population? Do you think they're ready for this? Based on your research, you think people are ready to try this burger and they're rooting for you, or are you finding a lot of resistance there?
I think it's twofold for both. If the strength of what Mzansi can do and what we are doing is that at the burger launch on a couple of weeks ago, I remember looking out and just sort of taking it in, all these people that were there. Yeah. And somebody was representing one of South Africa's largest food companies. Somebody was actually representing financiers that actually invest into the meat industry and other food, but the meat industry. We obviously had politicians. We had people from green. We had people that were not so green. we were able to combine a whole bunch of people together and speak and give them our narrative of how we want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Two of the people that I looked at, and they were sitting next to each other, and they didn't know. I don't think they knew this, but one of them was a representative from a meat industry body, and the other was Nikki Vernon, who's from the Farm Animal Sanctuary. Now, the fact that we can get those people together under the same roof, I think, is a testament to the company that we're running. When it comes to the conversations that we're having with the meat industry, we've been speaking to them almost directly since day one. Sometimes I think they are just curious to say what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think some people in the earlier stage, like maybe farmers or, actually, it's quite interesting to see who might push back. But we want to position ourselves as a meat company that's innovative. And so that means in the same way that you say, well, you've got free range, grass fed, this and that, well, you'll have cultivated. And we're a meat company, so we shouldn't be treated anything differently. And that sort of works also in terms of the regulations. There's like the key thing you have to do there. In terms of direct pushback, we haven't had that. I think, as I said, we're too small, I think, to be knocking down their doors anytime soon. I think I'm expecting it. I'm not, I know that within, not maybe the sort of meat industry, but more on the sort of production side, the product side, that with plant-based, they've been pushed back on what you can call plant-based food. Not can you call a plant-based burger a burger, or milk? Can you call it milk if it's not? So I think that's the stage where we'll probably start having some headaches, which is a bit later down the line. But yeah, I think they aren't. I'm not going to say they're going to be opening arms to us, but I think they're not going to be knocking back as much as we might have seen in other areas like the States, where you've got strong lobbyists. In Europe, you've got strong lobby groups and a centralized government that makes decisions about food. We don't have that. It's a bit more fragmented here, so it's a bit more difficult to do that. So that's, I think, we're going to continue these conversations, and we're speaking to, as I said, food companies, and those are the ones that really make the decision because they buy meat. But, when it comes to the South African consumer and members of the public, we've gotten great feedback. The amount of reach that we've gotten actually in the last 2 months is along the lines of like 25, 30 million circulation, whether it's radio, TV articles, or, all those things. Yeah. 25 million people have engaged. Maybe it's not 25 individuals. And the amount of, it's overwhelmingly positive. The media is overwhelmingly positive, which is a great sign. I get attacked a little bit on whether it's comments on Facebook and all these things from people that are very pro meat or very pro vegan, and so we get some pushback, but I think it's more on the extremes. Yeah, I think your typical consumer in South Africa, and the research that you were alluding to, and what my nonprofit work, what we did, and my organization did this a couple of years ago, was the average South African looks like they're ready to consume, or to eat rather, cultivated meat, something like 53%, so just about the majority. And they'd be willing to do it when it becomes widely available and at a price point that might be even a little bit higher. So, we're looking at a South African consumer base that maybe doesn't know a lot about cultivated meat, but once you explain it to them, you talk about them, you connect them, maybe the environmental reasons, they seem to be more willing and open to try it. And finally on this, I think, which is for me as somebody who's worked in sort of food service and retail for 10 years over the last 15, is what are the buyers saying? What are the people in food service saying? What are the people in retail saying? And they are reaching out to us. They're very interested. I mean, we can't produce at the level that they need yet. And so I think that when you can bring out something like this with a trusted food company or a retail outlet or whatever, restaurants, you're going to be able to get far more South Africans to buy into it. And then, I think it's, if people enjoy it, they taste it and it tastes good. That's the only thing, and it doesn't compromise on that culture discussion that we were having earlier. Yeah,
which is very important. I mean, you spoke about environmental reasons. I think some people stopped eating meat for those reasons, or some for, I mean, in Deepak's case, we understand it's a religious reason, or maybe how he was raised, and with the idea of Mzansi Meat saying, "Hey, we removed all these things." You don't have to have, question your morals when you're eating meat anymore, in a way. So I was reading that the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations was saying that raising livestock for food is responsible for about 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. And someone was saying that that's more than all the cars in the world, all the vehicles that we have in the world. So, and you realize there that taking care of the planet or planetary health has become more important than personal health in a way, because we have the Gen Z and the millennials really running and rooting for us to take care of the planet, and which is where plant-based options come in, because they see, people are saying let's take care of the planet, so let's say no, stop eating meat. We have these plant-based options that can actually aid in us having a better, healthier planet. And if you look at our current food, I just want to preach a bit, because maybe these are things that you might not want to say, especially on a public platform. If you look at our current food supply, it's very flawed and inefficient. If you look at our grocery stores, the meat we buy is highly processed. Chicken doesn't look like chicken anymore. It's like something different. And if you go, because most of these meats are factory farmed, and it's horrible what happens in these factories. It's you would really throw up if you see how they breed these animals. They inject things into them. There's something called formaldehyde, which is like an embalming agent that they inject into these animals to try and prevent some sort of sickness. And you look at things like that and you wonder, what am I eating? So I'm saying this to say that is Mzansi Meat the hero that we've been waiting for? Because all of these things are removed. The animals are not harmed. I'm thinking in my own right that Mzansi Meat and companies like you, they ever emerge in South Africa, could probably be the heroes we've been waiting for, and we should probably be rooting. Not that I'm blowing a horn because I have you here today, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
I'm trying to also hear we deserve, not what we need. Batman quotes, but I can't remember it. I think there's a we've never done this stuff. We've never done anything the same. So if you look at the last 10,000 years, let's say, as we became an agricultural society, we've never gone and said, okay, let's continue the same path, even if there's big resistance. It results in change over like 100 years. I look at something like this. The need for communication has always been a fundamental human thing. I mean, it's all animals actually. And our communication has vastly changed over the last however many years. It's vastly improved. It's sometimes maybe also to some detriment, because social media has its issues, but it's still we still always vastly. I mean, our goal is always to improve the way that we do things, make it better, make it quicker, whatever it is. Sometimes it's gone down the wrong direction, and sometimes it hasn't. So if you look at our food system, if you look at it from the view that we are now, where we're sitting right now, not in these chairs, but as a species, looking at our food system, looking forward, it's like there's no ways you can really say, like, how do we move away from consuming 70 billion land animals every year? That's around the world. How do we move away from killing, I think it's over 1 trillion fish, marine life every year? It's like it's completely connected with millions of people's, billions of people's like livelihoods. It's something that people eat 2 or 3 times a day. It's just so ingrained into who and how we are. So to try and change that system right now is incredibly difficult. But if you look forward, I mean, if you go forward and then look backwards, and if you are in a situation where people are then presented, they're like, here's a cultivated beef burger or chicken or fish or ostrich or whatever it is, and say this is coming from cells that have now, they're delicious and it's high protein, all that kind of stuff. And then you go, and then provide them with a conventional. Like it would be insane to go and say, well, why would this thing's readily available. I can choose this. Why would I ever want to choose something that causes suffering to an animal? But if you do it now, it's difficult for people to make that choice because meat is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So I try and look at it through that lens to say that, like, very likely that in 100 years' time, the future generations will look at us and say, what were they thinking? They were destroying the planet. They were this, they were that. But it's like, it's very easy to do that when you're like in the future, and or as we do now with people living behind us, or in the past rather. So that's the gaze that I look at it. In terms of the industry, conventional industry, it can't continue like the way it's doing.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to feed, you just don't want to be able to feed the new 1 billion people that are going to be on this continent alone, through the conventional forms. Why would you want to? You wouldn't do that if you were saying, we don't accept that when it comes to banking and mobile phones and stuff. It's like, let's look at the new technology and see what we can do. And you've got early adoptions on those things. So anyway, I think we won't do business as usual. There will be pressures from whether it's market or environmental or political or youth, younger people, where you said that switch from health, where they've gone in the world health has jumped over their personal health, which when you label it like that, it's actually very interesting that that's happened. So I think there's going to be a number of things that happen to kind of push like the market towards this one new direction, let's say. Is cultivated meat the silver bullet? I don't think anything has ever been the silver bullet. Yeah. There's always been so many different factors to help people shift and change, whether it's diet or whether it's thoughts, views on how we treat certain people in certain populations, certain animals. It has changed because of a variety of different factors. And I'm probably not answering a question, but I'll give you like one or two last examples. So ones that I've always liked to sort of speak to when I try and talk about this concept. And in New York, I think in like the 1800s, it was this whole belief that the whole of New York was going to be covered in manure. The New York was going to be under just mountains and mountains of manure. The sea would fall into chaos. There were people getting sick and all that kind of stuff because of all the horses that were needed to move people around. And that was, if you looked at it from that, where you stood then and looked forward, you're like, this is probably going to happen. Look at all this, literally, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but there's stuff everywhere. Yeah. But then what happened is, you had the Henry Ford came out with a car which made horses not as economical and a few other things, and people switched. They did it without having to be told by like a government or something. They did it because it was a better decision. Now, are cars better? No, well, there's another discussion about fossil fuels. And the same thing is said when it comes to whaling. Whaling was a pretty accepted way of doing doing business and getting resources. And you could go. I stayed in Durban for a while, and you go to the Bluff in the 60s. I think it was. You could go to in the 60s in our parents' lifetime. They could go and watch people bringing in whales. Hermanus, which is now a place where people look at whales and that's a festival around them, where they were just getting killed. Yeah. And the same thing with this, with states, and whaling was a way of getting. It's a whale it's blubber for like oils and stuff. Yeah. And then kerosene came along, and amongst other things, not just kerosene, other things happened and made it uneconomical. So what I'm long-winded of saying is that the people will eat meat going forward. The way that we do it will change. The pressures that will come will be from very different places. And the driving forces of change is not going to be, I don't believe, one industry, but it's going to be a factor of different industries and different ideas that kind of result in completely different ways of eating. And so I think Mzansi is going to be part of that. And I think Mzansi is going to be the one leading that in Africa, and then hopefully the world.
Amazing. You answered my next question about the future of meat and how we, you see us consuming meat in the future, or the future of food. When are you looking at hitting market or some sort of market?
Good. Yeah. You all my investors asked me the same question. No. So I always say as soon as possible. There's again a couple of sort of things that we have to sort of address. Yeah. Regulations being one of them. We need to. We're working already with a number of bodies and regulated types to get that across the line. We want to be. We want to get South Africans to eat Mzansi meat before the end of 2022. That's the year. Yeah. So that's our goal. And now it's we want to work with a restaurant chain or the equivalent to make that possible. That might not be wide scale market penetration, or nationwide at the very least, but by the end of this year, that's our goal. And then next year, we want to use the learnings that we get from being able to work and get feedback from consumers to then go into food service and a burger chain that I don't know if it's your favorite, but you'll know who they are.
Yeah.
And we want to be working with them to kind of take cultivated meats to a nationwide audience.
Who are they?
I'll tell you in the next podcast. Okay. we still there's a lot of handshakes that still have to happen, but so our goal is to work with them, make it possible. You could find it on you could find our pitch deck on the internet. You can actually work it out, but and there it'll be probably on a small scale, limited number of restaurants. But I think for us it's about getting it into mainstream as quickly as possible, and working with the people that know South African taste buds is best than anyone, or the best in the country. So that's our goal. So that's next year. And in terms of retail, that's a longer timeline. So food service, it's slightly quicker because of packaging and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of regulations around that. In 2 to 5 year timeline is what I want to see. I want to be able to go into a Checkers and pick up a Mzansi burger or boerewors or something, and then and make a purchase. So that's roughly our timeline.
Sounds exciting. I can't wait for that. 2 things. You spoke about fundraising, and I think I saw it online somewhere. I don't know if you want to touch on that, and maybe some parting words after that. Anything you'd like to speak about that I haven't touched?
Yeah, sure. It's I think we're talking about like sort of difficulties of startup. You need capital. You need people to work with. You need strategic partners. You need the people that understand your business, because there's also getting capital and funding from people that don't. It's quite detrimental. So we've luckily worked with a number of great folks and investors from local South Africans, as well as abroad, everything from Hong Kong to Germany and to the US. So we've got a nice broad spectrum. And so our 3rd of May, it's roughly, I shouldn't be saying the date, but very soon, next couple of weeks, we're going to kick off our seed raise, which means, it's just like sort of that one just before you start really kicking off in what they call Series A and above. We're really expanding into more mainstream retail, etc., and production. So that starts now, and it's an exciting time. We've my co-founder Tasneem, she's currently in Europe. She's talking to folks in Switzerland and France, and then the Netherlands. And then I'll be heading to San Francisco in a while and speaking to folks around that, and we're chatting to people in South Africa as well. So it's really about it's getting enough money to ultimately allow us to scale. I mean, that's what we want to do. Yeah. We want to build out our team from where we are at the moment to 10, 20 individuals in the next 18 months or so, and then also create a facility where we can go from a couple of kilograms where we're at now to potentially getting into the tonnage, and it's really an optimization process, because that will allow us to then say, okay, how do we then take this so that we can produce enough burgers to go to retail, to go to or steak or whatever it is, what we might be looking at. We've got some innovation when it comes to using that funding that we're going to be using is also through some innovation to allow us to optimize and improve our products. So that's the goal, and we're trying to hit that in the next 3 to 6 months. And looking for, if there's anyone listening, or please reach out, and happy to share more about our company.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. We wish you all the best with your innovation, and we're really excited to see what you have for us in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Lovely to be here. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.